that would cause hardship, or not hardship, but some concern to the city. If you look at this exhibit, and this is page 6 of our response, and you guys have made reference to this, and it shows the property and it shows the wells. A lot of these wells, as Mr. Hupp indicated, the solid black dots are active oil wells. And if you look at this, the subject property is completely separated from the locus of the city by a line of wells. And so any concern that you would have for wells on the subject property would be even greater with these wells, because they're not drilled, produced, or operated under city ordinances. And let me tell you guys, you do have very strict, very proactive, very good city ordinances. And most cities don't have that. And if you look at the protections that those ordinances actually provide, the risks become even more minimal than what they would be in all of the examples that Mr. Hupp gave out in Wichita. I mean, you have fencing requirements, you have screening requirements, you have permit fees, you've got plugging requirements, you know, everything. That stuff isn't present all over the world. And one thing that people misunderstand also is the value of this industry in eastern Kansas. They picture an old well that pumps along producing nothing. As you can see from Mr. Hunt's report, the value of these two projects is projected to be just over $9 million. That's not a well that just pumps along producing a little bit of oil. And oil is unique from a land use perspective. You can regulate the surface in many different ways. You can subject it to many different land uses. The surface could become a supermarket, could become a bar, could become a school, could be anything. And you all have the ability to drive what land use is best, the highest and best use, or whatever fits within your plan. But the difference with oil is, if you cannot drill wells, it has no value. In this case, if there can be no wells drilled on this property, essentially $9 million worth of property rights will have been taken from the applicant. And our question is the detriment that the city would really face from these wells equal to or greater than that, when we're talking about an area that's already surrounded by existing oil wells? And in addition, you know, the concerns with spilling in the riparian areas, that adds another layer rather than another risk to it. Because this is a riparian area, because of that water course, what that does is subjects the property to Clean Water Act provisions, specifically the SPCC rules, spill prevention, control, and countermeasure programs. And what that does is requires an operator to have an engineered drawing and implement the plan on the ground that would contain an entire failure of all of the system, containment and connected facilities, and ensure that that oil could not, or salt water could not escape that location. So rather than that posing a greater risk, it provides another layer of regulation and requirements that would be there to protect the city as opposed to the other way around. So, you know, the gist of the application is pretty straightforward, and you've heard all of it. I think I've got the majority of your questions, but if anybody has any others, I'd be happy to answer them.
I have one more. So, on the Exhibit 4, the initial investment to get this up and running, is that the $930 in 2016? The development cost, so close to $1 million.
Yes.
So my question would be, you've got, or you're going to find $1 million to do this, but they couldn't find the money, or it says on here on page 4, the FCIP property letter, October 2013, 4 paragraphs down, that it talks about how they we're lacking the funds to pay the assessment. So I guess I'm just kind of confused how you couldn't pay the assessments, but now all of a sudden we're gonna find, where are we finding $1 million?
No, that's a very fair question. And if you look at the property in its current condition as a residential use, which is what it's currently intended to be used for, from a cash flow standpoint, it is a liability. There are no developers wanting to develop it. There are special assessments due. It's generating negative cash flows. As an oil lease, it'll generate positive cash flows. And if you look at the income stream from this, if production is what it's expected to be, how many people would be interested in a project that you recover your money after the first year and you invest $1 million and then generate $9 million in return, recovering your initial investment in the first year? There are, in the current, right now, residential development's slow. We are in the middle of an oil boom. And I tell people that it's like the modern day gold rush. I see bankers, I see real estate agents, I see attorneys, all running out to get a piece of the action. People want to invest money into the oil business. Finding the money for an investment like that isn't difficult with the tax incentives and the income stream that's generated. We have record high oil prices. So to answer your question is...
Except it's not a guarantee that they're going to get any oil, right? So we're going to make this large investment without a guarantee to get anything, and then they're further behind, and then the city doesn't get paid regardless, correct?
Well, if the city doesn't get its money, then it's forecloses taxes.
Can I ask a follow-up question to what she asked? You mentioned an investor coming in. You also talked about the fact that your owners could decide to plug the wells whenever they want to. Isn't the economic reality of it such that if you have an investor and they're investing in oil and gas wells, they're going to demand in the agreement with the owner that they have the right to continue to operate those oil and gas wells until they realize their economic investment in the property?
That was my question too. Why would they be so quick to plug those wells and say, oh yes, we'll go ahead and stop and develop on that? Why would they want to do that? I wouldn't.
Well, you're absolutely right. They are going to require that they realize their economic investment. But when you look at the cash flows, that happens in 1 year. Will there be a minimum period of time that an investor would require? Absolutely. What that is, you don't know. It depends on what the production actually is. Like Mr. Hupp said, you don't go out there and drill 20 wells, 20 dry holes. No one would drill 20 dry holes in a row. If oil isn't there, then the development doesn't occur. If it's found, then it proceeds according to the cash flow diagram that you have. Is there an economic, or is there going to be a minimum period of time? Absolutely, there will be.
What do you envision that would be? I think that's where the city is with, we're putting a lot of thought into the plans for the future of Gardner, and if you could tell me 5 years, and then the demographer could say, we're expecting in 10, or something like that, a more defined, but it's just so much uncertainty of, one, you're going to find it. If you do find it, you're not going to want to give it up. 3, we want to put homes there because we have parks and schools there. So I just feel like there's not enough data to support.
One of the other things I will suggest to the commission is they've asked for a CUP of 20 years.
Right.
You don't have to grant 20 years.
The 20 years in the application is significant in that it guarantees that this use can be carried out until it's capable of being developed. You don't know whether it's going to be 5 years, 10 years. You don't know how long the recession will take, how long this property will sit until it can be developed for residential purposes. So short-term use would it would make it harder to find a quality investor that would do quality work, and in addition, it would basically, you wouldn't solve the entire problem. 20 years will take it until it should be developed. So there is...
Question. I'm getting a little confused when you say the 20 years would allow time to find a quality investor in the property. just my personal opinion, I think a quality